Since this is International Coaching Week, and I'm a Gallup Clifton Strengths coach, I thought I would put down what my top 10 strengths mean to me and how I use strengths to support people I work with. First of all, I work with leaders and entrepreneurs and founders who are trying to create organizations to create good, social good in the world. That can include environmental change, as well as creating jobs for people that perhaps other people wouldn't employ, helping people to have homes, good mental health, and a variety of other missions. And I usually start with the person's strengths. Now, these are my strengths, what's highlighted up there on my top 10. And what I always forget is that I lead with 4 of the influencing strengths. So influencing strengths are all about how you show up in a group. And to those of you who know me, my 4 influencing strengths won't surprise you. So the first one is maximizer. I love things to be brilliant. Sometimes it means I need to be told to freeze the design and move on because things can't be perfect. But a lot of the time I'm looking for the edge. How do we make something that's good great? And then I've got Activator, which is all about energy. And I love getting groups of people to move. I'm a bit like one of those molecules that comes in to catalyze a change in the world. I'm like bobbing around going, let's do this, let's move, let's go. Of course, one can always be a bit too pushy and a bit too energetic for everybody. And then my next 2 influencing strengths are self-assurance, which means I'm self-confident. And I realize whenever I go back to self-assurance that's been there all along. I've been quite self-contained, even as a small child. I've kind of known you are not the boss of me and known who I am. And then you have communication, which means I love talking. So no surprise I'm doing video. But communication is also about writing and about telling stories. And that's what I love about my work, is when I work with entrepreneurs, I'm often telling them stories about how other people have used a particular resource to achieve change, or a particular tool, or introducing people to each other, which leads quite neatly onto my only relationship building strength, connectedness. So relationship building strength is about emotion and feelings and about how you relate to people one-on-one, as opposed to influencing, which is how you relate to people in a group. And my connectedness means that I love introducing people. I think everyone should be connected. And I'm always thinking, oh, you would get on so well with this person. And what about that? And what about the following? And I use my open strengths workshops to do the same thing. So when someone comes along to those, they come with their strengths, but I tend to know who they are. And so I put them in little breakout rooms with other people who share their strengths, but also who I think they'll get on with or have shared passions and interests. And that's what my connectedness loves doing. It's also why I like LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is kind of an expression of my human connectedness, and I use it exactly the same way as I do in person. I'm always dragging people to meet other people. My festival last year was all about that. And on LinkedIn, I'm always going, oh, you should know this one and you should know that one. So that way we've covered my top theme, my top domain of influencing, with my bottom one, relationship building, my top 10. And so we'd follow up with strategic thinking. So in the thinking space, these are strengths that all happen in your head. So they're not actually about people, although a lot of my thinking is about people. And we'd start with strategic. So strategic means I always have a backup plan. And sometimes I think back to when I was 4 and my uncle taught me to play chess. Was I good at chess because I already had that strategic thinking that is, this happens, what about that? What about this? How about that? It's all around consequences, paths, directions. Or did my strategic thinking was sitting somewhere, maybe my top 10 or top 15, and kind of get drawn up to number 2 because I played chess until I was 12, sort of all the time. I was playing 3 times a week. I was in a chess team. So that is strategic thinking to me. And over the years, it's worked really well because I've always had a backup plan. And I found probably in the last 6 to 7 years, it's almost like I have strategic thinking. I call it in my back pocket. And now I no longer need to think through the backup plan because I have confidence that no matter what happens, I'll have a plan because I know I can lean into strategic and pull it forward and go, right, okay, this happens, so we're going to do this. And I do think that flexibility links into my third strength, which is learner. So it's also thinking strength. It's probably the most active of the thinking strengths in that you can see learner in action. So I love learning, and it means I love learning new things. I'm really flexible. But what I'm doing right now is the other half of learner, which is teaching. So I love sharing what I've learned. And when I'm running workshops where someone has learner, the rest of the team all go, oh, that's why you run around telling everyone how to make the latest macro in Excel, because you've learned it and now you want everyone else to learn it. So there is this teaching element to learner, but also learner is not just about book learning. It's about experiential learning. It's about being in the world. I often find one of my biggest learning experiences is I love learning how city streets connect. Okay. Oh, so that street's the same as that street. They just go around the mountain, which is one of the realizations I had when I lived in Cape Town, was I realized that this street, which had the same name, actually ran from way outside Cape Town all the way in. It just changed direction all the time because it was following the contours around the mountain. And the same when I'm in London, when I've been on the underground and then I pop up and then I realize, oh, it felt like I was going, when I look at the tube map, which is obviously not geographically accurate, I'm going this way. But actually, when I look at the streets, this is what I'm doing. So sometimes I go on a bus just to see the connections and let my learner get really happy. And it does mean I'm just always up for something new. I used to joke that I'd try and do something new every day, go a different route. I love going what my dad used to call there and back to see how far it is. See what happens if we go this way. And you can see that with strategic means I'm really flexible. And it also comes back to how I work with people is I always have a thing that could be useful. And with my communication, I'm seldom at a loss for words. But Intellection balances all of that out because Intellection is what I call the thinkiest of thinking strengths. It means I need time to think. I like reflecting. So you can hear how my two top domains of influencing, which is being in a space and having an effect and meeting people, alongside my thinking, which is I need to be calm and I need to have headspace on my own, because thinking in a group doesn't always work that well, I find. They balance each other really well. So this means that in some of the other tests, I come out as equally extrovert and introvert because I have this deep need to think. And Intellection is a really solidly thoughtful process. With this, I enjoy meeting people and getting out there. And finally, my top strength and my 10th strength are in the executing domain, which is all around getting stuff done, is task driven. An achiever and arranger balance each other really well. Achiever is definitely still so many years on after first doing the test, and I did it 3 times, an achiever always comes out as number 1. It's not about being a gold star person. It's about loving to say done. It's about enjoying ticking something off the list. I love it when I'm in workshops with other achievers and they think I'm psychic when I ask them if they've ever done something, realized it wasn't on their list, gone back and have written it on their list just so they could tick it off. But I know, that's what I have done more than once, but also every achiever I talk to does that once or twice a week, a month maybe. So achiever is just the drive to say done. The challenge achievers have is they work on the rhythm of a day. So at the end of a day, they like to say, what did I do? Sometimes being in a meeting isn't enough to say, what have I done? And so being able to own a delivery and sort of get that hit of saying done, cross it off the list, or just reflecting on the day and saying, I did that today, can sometimes cause an issue. And then arranger, so I kind of say I've got the bookends of executing. So achiever is very down a list. It's like whatever's on the list I need to tick off every day. Whereas a ranger is much more fluid. It's much more of a juggler. I love to pull the right people in the right place at the right time to make something happen. And I find that that works really well with my activator, my connectedness, and my learner, and my strategic. And then I can pull everything together. I know what needs to happen, and I can help people make that happen. It also comes out because I love organizing events. The first time I think I used a ranger was I ran a play as a producer when I was 12, and I had 35 actors, actresses, and I loved doing the scenes and the dancing and organizing the script writing and getting the musicians to play and finding the dry ice in the and finding leftover costumes in our school department, and seeing it all come together. That moment of it happened, I think, was my best arranger. And of course, my achiever got to say, finally it happened after months and months of rehearsals. So that's how my strengths work, and a little bit of how I work with clients. But to everyone, happy International Coaching Week.